2:47 in the morning, Sea of Japan. Military communications were operating normally. Patrol ships were exchanging data with surveillance aircraft. Command centers were receiving live updates. Satellites relayed signals without delay. It was supposed to be another routine night. Then the silence began. At first it looked like minor interference. Messages arrived late. Voice channels echoed. Digital maps hesitated. Operators blamed atmospheric conditions, but within seconds, screens started freezing. Tactical displays went dark. The communication link with forward units simply disappeared. Inside Pacific command centers, technicians rushed to backup systems. Nothing responded. Cables were intact, servers were online, power was stable, but the signal was gone. U.S. ships operating near the Korean Peninsula attempted direct ship-to-ship contact. No reply. The region had entered electronic shadow. One officer later described it as being blind in open water. Without centralized communication, every vessel had to rely solely on its own sensors. It was not just inconvenient, it was dangerous. Analysts quickly noticed something unsettling. The blackout was not random. Its spread followed a directional pattern, originating from North Korean territory and moving outward across the sea. This was not technical failure, this was coordinated. Silent operational protocols were activated. No public alerts, no civilian warnings. Fighter aircraft entered discreet readiness. Naval formations began separating to reduce exposure. The objective was simple: do not present clustered targets. Orbital sensors soon detected unusual activity inland. Mobile platforms had been repositioned hours earlier. Antenna structures were rising in mountainous terrain. Power sources activated in sequence. Everything pointed to preparation. This was not improvisation, it was rehearsal. Meanwhile, U.S. ships started adjusting their spacing. Groups broke apart. Courses shifted. No interception was ordered. There was no physical attack, only invisible pressure. From the outside, the ocean looked calm. Inside command rooms, the atmosphere felt like freefall. One senior officer summarized it quietly. We lost our voice, but they were still listening. Every maneuver, every heading change, every system activation, it was all being observed. North Korea was not trying to destroy anything that night. They were learning how long it takes a fleet to react without communication, learning which units move first, learning how command redistributes forces under partial blindness. And while most of the world slept, a short directive reached American vessels: change course immediately. Not to confront, but to survive the unknown. Because when communications fail near North Korea, it is rarely an accident. And 16 minutes later, U.S. ships began to move. Silent, separated, like pieces being repositioned on an invisible chessboard. 2:53 in the morning. The first interference maps began to form. Analysts layered satellite feeds, maritime sensors, and coastal monitoring data on a single display. The pattern became obvious. The blackout was not scattered. It moved in waves. It started inland, crossed the sea, and slowly swallowed communication corridors. Inside Pacific Command, someone finally said it out loud. They're sweeping the area. Every attempt to re-establish contact was immediately suppressed. Alternative frequencies failed. Emergency channels returned nothing but static. The fleet was operating blind, without centralized coordination, without a shared operational picture. Each captain now made decisions based only on what their own radar could see. And that was exactly the point. Orbital sensors soon detected mobile platforms activating deep inside North Korea. Vehicles had been repositioned hours earlier. Antennas rose from concealed mountain locations. Power generators came online in sequence. This was not chaos. This was choreography, a controlled electronic warfare exercise conducted against real forces. Meanwhile, U.S. vessels continued dispersing. Groups separated further. Courses diverged. The goal was simple: do not present concentrated targets. Fighter aircraft remained grounded. No interception was ordered. There was still no physical strike, only invisible pressure. From the outside, The ocean appeared calm. Inside command rooms, it felt like controlled descent. One analyst later described it as falling without moving. Every formation change, every course adjustment, every sensor activation, all of it was being captured. North Korea did not want impact. They wanted behavior. They wanted reaction times. They wanted to know who moves first, which systems come online, how command reorganizes under partial blindness. This was not about territory. This was about data, and data doesn't explode. It gets stored. At 2:59, the interference began to slowly retract. Signals returned in fragments, broken packets, delayed feeds. But they returned. The silence was lifting. Yet the board had already changed, because now Pyongyang had something far more valuable than damage. They had insight. And everyone involved understood one thing. This was only the first layer. Perfeito. Aqui vai a parte 3, mantendo o mesmo tom documental, tensão crescente e linguagem humana. Parte 3, 3:02 in the morning. Communications were slowly stabilizing, not completely. Some channels lagged. Data arrived fragmented. Several routes remained silent. But it was enough to rebuild the picture. Inside Pacific Command, analysts began reviewing everything recorded during the blackout. Response times, formation changes, course adjustments, sensor activations. It felt like watching footage of themselves reacting to danger, and the pattern became clear. North Korea had not tried to blind the fleet for long. They were measuring how quickly the first maneuver occurred, measuring which ships moved first, measuring which areas received priority. Every American decision had been captured as raw data. One general summarized it in a single sentence. They weren't trying to stop us, they were studying us. That changed the room, because attacks seek immediate damage. Rehearsals seek future efficiency. Satellite imagery soon confirmed that mobile platforms inside North Korea were already being withdrawn. Antennas were coming down, vehicles returning to covered positions. The operation was ending, clean, no visible traces, almost as if nothing had happened. But internally, the event received a different designation. It was classified as an electronic penetration exercise. There had been no explosions, no wreckage, but something far more serious had occurred, a real-world simulation against real forces. U.S. naval units maintained their altered routes. No immediate return to original positions. Command chose distance. The message was silent but unmistakable. The environment had changed. Later, diplomats would attempt to soften the narrative. Spokespeople would reference technical instability. But inside military circles, the assessment was direct. North Korea had demonstrated regional interference capability without firing a single weapon, and that opened a new front. Because future conflicts would no longer begin with fire. They would begin with silence. And when silence comes first, impact usually follows. 3:20 in the morning. Communications were fully restored. Systems normalized. Maps refreshed. The fleet regained situational awareness, but nothing returned to how it was before. Inside Pacific Command, the conclusion was unanimous. This was not an isolated incident. It was a message. North Korea had proven it could touch the system without being seen, without crossing borders, without firing weapons, without triggering immediate retaliation. And that changed the strategic calculus, because visible attacks provoke response. Invisible actions create doubt. Internal reports began circulating among Allied forces. Japan, South Korea, naval units operating across the Pacific, all received the same quiet guidance. Reduced predictability. Routes stopped repeating. Schedules became irregular. Formations loosened. Not out of fear, out of adaptation. Meanwhile, inside North Korea, there was complete silence. No official statements, no public celebration, no released footage, as if nothing had happened. But the data had already been collected. And data reshapes wars before they start. Military analysts recognized the shift immediately. The battlefield was no longer just sea and air. It was the invisible spectrum, the ability to disrupt, observe, and learn without detection. One admiral summarized it with a short sentence. The next war starts before anyone notices. That night, U.S. ships were not attacked, but they were tested, and testing comes before execution. The Pacific remained calm, the water stayed quiet, but beneath the surface a new layer of conflict had been activated, silent, persistent, and far harder to contain.